perfect service. It says right here, at least I've got perfect signal. But the people coming through before said that there was, or at least one person came through before said there was some issues with lagging and stuff. So we're gonna make sure that it's not that it's me or them. I don't really know. But either way, if you're coming through here later on down the road, my name is Andrew Douglas Moon. I am a fragrance reviewer and YouTuber. So perfumery, but on the flip side, I also do like to study through with each other and teach and go through religious studies. Specifically, for a while, it has been mostly going through biblical studies. But on the flip side of that, I've also done some of the Bhagavad Gita. I have intentions to go through other things as well. So it's a general religious studies series that I do through some of these live streams. Not very cohesive with the overarching thing that I do as the main core of this channel. But at the end of the day, like, it's something that I'm passionate about and I do it. So I am not up at front, just going to let you know this. I'm not a biblical fundamentalist or a literalist or anything like that. Some people say I'm too conservative. Some people say I'm not a Christian at all. Everybody has their own interpretations and opinions. That is what it is. Just going ahead and saying that right off the gate before we fully dive in. So I'm going to be reading from the SBL Study Bible, that is the Society of Biblical Literature. This is my personal favorite study Bible, other than the New Oxford Annotated Study Bible. Very good materials, very good quality overall. But this is going to be coming from Leviticus' study notes to start it off with. Then I'm going to make my way into Matthew, and then going to go through a handful of other things today. Potentially going to work through a little bit more of the Roman Empire and discussions about that. So before I fully dive in, just want to find out for sure if anybody comes through and actually watches, if at the very least you're able to see me and see what's going on very well, because again, like I said, I was told that the service was acting kind of funny, but I don't know that for certain. So just again, if anybody could let me know that, that would be very nice. But yes, I'm going to be diving into Leviticus, the opening study notes for it. It covers a lot of things, so the name and canonical context, understanding and scholarship of authorship and date, ancient and cultural context, as usual for the introductions to every book, literary genre, and then distinctive features. So that's pretty much my favorite part. I like when we get to that. But then once we actually get into Leviticus, it is going to be really dense information, pretty hard for a lot of people to get through. Some people, you can think of it as just like a slog through a movie where people end up falling asleep. In and of itself, though, there is meaningful things to comprehend about historic Judaism. That using that word is just the way we're going to go about it, but it's more like the historic Israelite culture as they were developing, and so much coming forth. So that is what we're going to be going through today. And then, like I said, making our way into Matthew, continuing through Matthew, and then going to talk about a handful of other things. So I appreciate every single person who takes the time to stop through and listen as we do this together. So I am going to get started here very shortly. So if anybody could just let me know if everything's working very well. Is it seeming kind of laggy right now? I've been hearing different mixed things about it so far, depending on where I'm at this moment. If I have to reconfigure, I will. That's totally fine with me. But I just don't want to get too started with the actual reading, and you guys are not able to see me or hear what's going on. Because earlier, apparently, there was a severe lag, and I don't really know what was up with that. But it shouldn't be happening, because, like I said, I have, like, absolute perfect service at this moment. So just please, if somebody could comment, let me know. Is it acting funny? Does it seem okay? And then I'll actually be able to get pretty started. But yes, going to be going through introductory notes to the book of Leviticus in the Old Testament or the Hebrew Scriptures. Going to be moving over back towards Matthew, doing a little bit more of Romans as I'm working through that, and going so forth. But I guess to start with, I can probably get started actually reading. I'm going to do right now. So the book of Leviticus, with its often repetitive nature, obscure terminology, foreign concepts, and focus on a culturally distant cult of animal sacrifice, it is no wonder that Leviticus is usually considered one of the most difficult biblical books to understand, and even more so to enjoy. Really seriously, it is difficult for most people to work their way through it. When I was going back through the Hebrew Scriptures of the Old Testament again very recently, it was a very seriously a major slog working through that. Whoopsie. Sorry, you guys. Let me get my phone propped up just right. I'm on a hill right now. So, going through, yet, despite the barriers to modern comprehension, Leviticus offers the attentive and devoted reader one of the most cogent and thoughtful theological statements on the relationship between Israel and its God to be found anywhere in the Bible. So it's covering the name and canonical context. Leviticus is the third book in the biblical canon. found in the center of the five books of Moses, also known as the Pentateuch or Torah. The modern name comes from the Latin, which itself borrowed from the Greek name of the Septuagint, so Luticon. I'm not going to pronounce that properly, just throwing it out there. There's a lot of words that are a little bit iffy and difficult to comprehend and pronounce. Both titles designate the book as related to the Levites, the Israelite tribe appointed as cultic servants. The Hebrew name for the book, as is the case for all the books of the Torah, is derived from the first word of the first verse. So, Vayikra, or he called. Again, I'm not going to in any way, shape, or form pronounce or try to act like I'm pronouncing that properly, just trying to give you guys an understanding of what it says. So, authorship and date. Despite having its own title, there is really no book of Leviticus in any meaningful sense. Leviticus never existed in an independent literary or textual unit at any stage of its development or incorporation into the biblical canon. The Pentateuch is not five independent books cobbled together, but rather a single literary work presented in 5 volumes, the division having been based on the material limits of ancient scroll technology. The essential continuity of Leviticus with what comes before and after is apparent from both a broad perspective and from a close reading. The very first words of the book, literally, he called to Moses, lack an explicit subject in Hebrew. The English edition of the Lord is assumed from the preceding verses at the end of Exodus. Who Moses is, where and when the events of Leviticus take place, what the nature and historical context and background of the relationship between Israel and its deity is, none of these are explained in Leviticus itself, but are dependent on the story that has been told from the beginning of the Pentateuch to this point. So, through the Genesis narratives and then through the Exodus narratives, that is all coming together. Without it, obviously, something like Leviticus would not make any sense. Real quick, by the way, just want to throw this out there before I continue reading the authorship and date, context, and scholarship of Leviticus. If anybody could just let me know if this stream is lagging, acting funny. I've heard a few things from when I tried to stream earlier. I just want to make sure it's not driving anybody crazy and that I'm wasting time right now because I'll have to relocate, restart. So if you could, just somebody at least, I don't need you to stick around, but if somebody could at least comment, let me know if it's performing well or not, or if you're able to see me and hear me clearly. But I am going to continue reading. If I have to restart, that's okay. So, though its compositional history is a topic of long-standing scholarly debate, it is universally recognized that the Pentateuch is a composite text made up of the multiple distinct documents or layers that have been compiled together. Pentateuchal source on which there is broadest agreement is also known as the priestly source, or P. The name priestly is based on the insistent and sustained attention that this document gives to cultic matters, that is, the sacrificial system and its personnel, which is the domain of the priesthood, and on the reasonable enough assumption that it was written by members of the priestly community. The priestly source stretches in the Pentateuch from the creation account of Genesis 1 to the death of Moses in Deuteronomy 34, but its center and its fundamental raison d'etre, is the narrative of the building of the divine abode, or the tabernacle, in Exodus 25 to 31 and then 35 to 40, and the cultic instructions and other laws that are delivered by God to Moses from within that structure, most of which are found in Leviticus. All of Leviticus belongs to P, or the priestly source, but this is not to say that it is therefore easily dated or contextualized historically. The priestly document that was incorporated into the Pentateuch was itself the end product of a long process of textual growth and development. Scholars identify 2 main stages in the development of the priestly source, both of which are well represented in Leviticus: an original core text, known somewhat confusingly as simply P, and a later expansion designated as H, named for and identified by its recurring theme of holiness. The common practice is to assign Leviticus 1 through 16 to P, and Leviticus 17 to 26, or 27, to H, though some scholars treat Leviticus 17 as part of P. There are significant parts of the priestly source outside of Leviticus that postdate H, and it's likely that there are many still later additions to the text, most of which are difficult to identify with any certainty. There is also scholarly dispute as to the scope of the original P source. Some claim that it concluded as early as the book of Exodus, thus leaving all of Leviticus as a later expansion. Some, who understand P is stretching into Numbers or beyond, still claim that parts of Leviticus are much later additions. It is thus not possible to pinpoint a single date to which Leviticus, or the P document of which it is a part, can be assigned. The best we can do is to suggest potential ranges for the initial P composition, the later H composition and expansion, and the final text that was taken up into the Pentateuch. Obviously, a lot of times what you're going to see anyways with most of the texts, especially in the Hebrew scriptures, is that they're always going to say ultimately, and we have to say that we don't have like a firm comprehension of the original piecing together of most of these things because, well, to be completely frank, there is no such thing. It is just trying to understand to the best of the abilities in archaeology and textual compositions and comparisons, when does it seem like these things were pieced together and so forth. So anyways, even this, however, is easier said than done. There's little scholarly agreement as to the date of both P and H. While all acknowledge the focus on the cult, scholars come to disparate conclusions on about what this means for the date, with some scholars looking to an original composition in the pre-exilic first temple period before 586 BCE, and others placing the text squarely or even quite late in the post-exilic second temple period in 515 BCE. Even the assumption that the cult described in Leviticus is related to that of the Jerusalem temple, however, is not universally held, with some prominent scholars connecting it instead to the ancient sanctuary at Shiloh. As for H, it has long been noted that this priestly layer shares many features of language and ideology with the book of Ezekiel. Predictably, scholars therefore dispute whether Ezekiel is based on H, giving H a roughly exilic date, or H is based on Ezekiel, in which H can be dated well into the post-exilic period. All right, there we go. So, continuing forwards now. On balance, it seems likely that the original P document, including a significant portion of Leviticus, was composed in the pre-exilic period. With regular expansions and additions through the exile and into the Second Temple era, there is thus no firm date for the composition of Leviticus, nor there an author. We are dealing with a priestly school, one that stretched over centuries. So now going to be going into the ancient and cultural context according to updated scholarship. One thing that is difficult is there are different types we need to think about when it comes to scholarship. So a lot of people are under this comprehension or under this understanding that scholarship is unimportant. A lot of people have this thought of like, just read it, just read it. You can say that about pretty much any text. Just read it, roll with it, who gives a crap? There is an issue though of every single aspect of historical text, literature, whatever, and especially religious texts like the Bible, the scriptures themselves, have cultural meanings from when they orally were being passed down and developed all the way. I need to know how to treat my indentured servants. Need to know. Oh, we're definitely going to be getting to that. That is something we're going to be getting to. A lot of people already know kind of where that's coming from, but that's definitely information we're going to get to. By the way, if you come through here, just want to throw this out there. If you can hear me and understand me, hopefully I'm not lagging or anything. I am in no way, shape, or form a fan of, nor do I care for like apologetics and all that stuff. That's not what kind of situation this is. These are going through scholarship studies and notes from a non theological biased forward stance to get a grasp of how we understand the culture, the history, and so much more about the writings, the text, the oral developments, into the written developments, and all that stuff. Because way too many people out here trying to make excuses for, arguments for, and all kinds of other stuff instead of giving texts the respect that they deserve and then trying to comprehend them from there. So, like I said, never here to argue or debate, nor am I here to also try to ever say things are not what they seem to be. And that is something that does great harm to society and to people trying to be sincere to any text that they subscribe to. By the way, I also like your name. With that being said, going into ancient and cultural context here, part of what makes Leviticus so difficult to date is that it quite consciously refuses to interact with any recognizable historical context for its composition. Scholars can debate which sanctuary the original priestly source was affiliated with because the text itself gives no hint. Jerusalem is never mentioned, but neither is any other place. Leviticus is remarkably consistent in keeping itself limited to its own story world. Thus, every description of sacrifice or sanctuary or priesthood or Israelite community is presented in terms of the tabernacle that stands in the center of the Israelite camp in the wilderness. It is left to the reader to make the conceptual leap from the tabernacle to the temple from the wilderness to the settled land. That Leviticus emerged from a priestly context is hardly contestable. It is laser focused on the sanctuary, its rites, and those who serve it. Less obvious is whether Leviticus or the rest of the priestly source was ever intended for an audience outside of the relatively insular priestly circles. There are parts of the book that read like a handbook for priestly service. From Leviticus 6, 8 to 13, for instance, it describes the rule of the burnt offering, in which the instructions are given, in which the instructions that are given are entirely about how the priest carries out the ritual. On the other hand, the ritual laws require an Israelite to bring an offering if she sins unintentionally, or if he becomes impure, become dead letters if they are not received by those lay Israelites. The theology of Leviticus is the theology of a community, not merely of the priestly class. Moreover, the way the text communicates by making available to the reader aspects of the sanctuary and its services that are otherwise forbidden or off limits suggest an audience wider than merely the priesthood. So again, trying to get a comprehension for the locale, the people in these developing communities, because that is what happened. Most of these things, these concepts, these matters are things that developed as time went on, from oral traditions and on into then written traditions for like, this is how we are going to do these things. And in a similar way, just like I discussed during the end of the Exodus study the last time, you're going to see a lot of stuff start to very much look like something that an us versus them mentality of here is ritualistic practices, but then when other people do it, it is something that we see as like divination, magic, and so much and so forth. That is a us versus them thing that kind of develops through a lot of differing beliefs, but especially when we read this, you are very much seeing like we have the right rituals, we've got the right things, but then they are also still going to be understood to be developed traditions, just like we see through all of history, early church history, all that good stuff. So, by the way, just want to throw this out there again. If anybody could please let me know if my video is lagging, because I don't want to keep wasting time going through this particular stream this morning. If where I am is causing trouble, because I know somebody earlier told me when I tried to stream here before, I've never had problems here before, but somebody told me that there was issues, and I just want to make sure everything is like coming across at least clear enough, so that I can keep going through this, because I don't want to have to restart too much. But other than that, I appreciate anybody who comes through, anybody who has thoughts and opinions. I respect everybody. So as long as you're being respectful. So the reception of Leviticus, however, was always tied to that of the larger works of which it was a part. Before the priestly document was combined with the other sources into the Pentateuch, there is little evidence that it was widely known or had any authoritative status outside the priestly circles in which it was composed and transmitted. P contains some significant ritual innovations, most prominently the purification and reparation offerings that constitute the core of P's theology. Yet, for all the attention these sacrifices receive within the text and story world of Leviticus, they are entirely absent from every other biblical book, with the exception of Ezekiel, whose author, it has been long recognized, is almost certainly from the same circle responsible for the Pentateuchal priestly source. Just one more time, anybody who doesn't know what the Pentateuch is, it's the first 5 books of the Old Testament or the Hebrew Scriptures. Equally unknown outside of the P is the most significant ritual event in Leviticus, the Day of Atonement, described in Leviticus 16. These are but 2 prominent examples to illustrate the point as far as we can tell. The priestly text. Holy cow. Oh my gosh, some geese just went flying over me, and I don't know if you could hear the sounds they were making, but like, I don't know, it just randomly, it sounded like a clown honking his little horn. It scared the crap out of me. Sorry, you guys. Anyway, so moving forwards, I actually just brain farted for a second. So yeah, the prominent examples to illustrate the point, as far as we can tell, the priestly text was unknown or ignored amongst the vast majority of Israelite society, even among the literate elite responsible for the rest of the Hebrew Bible. Once P became part of the Pentateuch and P's main ritual legal section became Leviticus, the third scroll of the Pentateuch, the reception of Leviticus, was dependent on the reception of the Pentateuch as a whole. So again, none of these laws would have really made a lot of sense if they didn't already have the cultural oral traditions and understandings and stories that we now call, Genesis, Genesis and Exodus, in whatever forms they would have had them circulating around. So that's just kind of like building blocks that we see going on here as time and development happens. So though the Pentateuch was compiled in the Persian period, likely sometime in the 5th century BCE, It probably did not achieve widespread authority until the Hasmonean period, mid-2nd through mid-1st century BCE. And this is precisely when we see the first evidence of the influence of Leviticus outside of itself. On a practical level, archaeology has revealed that sudden and widespread appearance of ritual baths in Israel in the 1st century BC, this would seem to attest to a growing adherence to the laws of ritual purity found in Leviticus. In the Mishnah Tractate Tamid, likely the earliest material, is a detailed description of the temple rituals, which also suggests that the cultic rituals of Leviticus were being implemented by the second temple period, by the end of the second temple period. In the period after the destruction of the Jerusalem temple in 70 CE, when even the possibility of performing the ritual acts detailed in the book was no longer available, Leviticus became a central object of Jewish interpretation. Among the great innovations of the classical rabbis was the notion that, in the absence of the temple, studying the ritual laws was equivalent to observing them. Thus, Leviticus garnered intense attention. More than a third of all the references to the Pentateuch in the Babylonian Talmud are to Leviticus, despite being the shortest of the 5 books. Real quick, I just want to throw this out there. Thank you guys for coming through here. This is never, ever, ever going to be anything like apologetics or over theologicizing, things like that. I know that's not the proper word to use, but this is going to be reading through actual scholarship from across the board. So that we can get a grasp and an understanding in any way, shape, or form the information that people are coming up with, the theories, the concepts, the ways to try to understand differing perspectives and beliefs. And that's just what I do here. And looks at this stuff. So in the period, as Judaism identified more and more strongly with Leviticus, early Christians also linked the book with Jews and disassociated themselves, you got what I was trying to say, from it, and increased in increasingly explicit terms. For some of the church fathers, the ritual laws of Leviticus were nothing less than a punishment from God for the sin of the golden calf. These are the laws that above all are abrogated with the coming of Jesus. Strikingly, the first prominent exception to the Christian revocation of all Jewish law is also from Leviticus. So you shall love your neighbor as yourself in 19:18. Over the centuries, Leviticus has come to represent some uncomfortable tensions. The origin of much culturally distinctive Jewish practice, but also a repository of long outmoded and indeed impracticable ritual behavior, the longest and most detailed communication from the deity about proper cultic worship, but also text seemingly devoid of explicit moral guidance. It is as revered in observant Jewish communities as it is ignored and or held in contempt by secular readers. In the discussion that follows, it is hoped that the oft-hidden beauty and insights of Leviticus will be made clear. So again, the concepts going on here in the SBL Study Bible. This is the Society of Biblical Literature. Sorry, you guys, give me just a second. So the SBL Study Bible is a study Bible done by scholars all across the board of different walks of life. So it is very much not a devotional study Bible in any way, shape, or form. It is based around actual scholarship of all different forms. And the concept here is to get a grasp of the contextual history of the peoples and the groups that developed during these times in the land of Canaan and so much more, ancient Mesopotamia, that became the people of Israel and Judah as it develops on throughout the centuries, and the oral traditions that then later became pen to paper is the way that I will word it right now. Understanding that gives a great comprehension of how and why things were believed, why they were developed, and why they were put into practice. Because, well, to me personally, it's very important to get a grasp on that so that you can even start to crack the surface of what it is that these peoples were to stand on and what they were to believe throughout history and how we got to where we are today. Because believe me, and you don't have to believe me if you don't want to, but one thing is for sure, a lot developed, a lot was done away with, a lot continues on. It's all over the board. So, literary genre and context. Because Leviticus is not an independent work, but simply the middle of the larger priestly composition, it does not have a crisply defined structure. It was never meant to be read on its own. It is rather the direct continuation of and directly dependent on the chapters that immediately precede it. The priestly narrative of Sinai theophany. According to the priestly source, the main object of Moses' ascent of Mount Sinai was to receive the blueprints for the tabernacle, which, upon completion, will become God's physical home in the midst of the Israelite camp. The end of Exodus describes the meticulous construction of the tabernacle, culminating in God's inhabitation of the divine abode. The newly built tabernacle is the nearly singular focus of Leviticus 1 through 16. So at the end of Exodus, we are seeing that. We are seeing the construction, very long chapters of the construction of the tabernacle, and also like understanding of the priestly vestments and all that kind of stuff. So really developing these traditional concepts here for these peoples. So the newly built tabernacle is the nearly singular focus of Leviticus 1 through 16. The sacrifices to be offered there, the ordination practices of its priests, and the inauguration of its cultic service, and the means by which it was to be contaminated and could be cleaned. So they were very much, like a lot of other Mesopotamian communities at the time, they were very much under this idea that things could make things very unclean very easily. So not just by like committing certain sins, but more or less as well in like a deeper level of just little things, little tiny certain things in their cultural concepts and practices could make something or someone unclean, and you had to cleanse yourself to be able to do things like ritual practices. So the second part of Leviticus, chapters 17 through 27, is mainly focused on defining those parts of life that belong to the sphere of the holy and regulating human behaviors that may impinge on the holy, hence their common designation as H. Some of these laws are still connected with the tabernacle and its cult. The care of the lampstand and table for the bread of the presence in Leviticus 24, for instance, or the appropriate types of sacrificial animals in Leviticus 22. Most, however, deal with the world outside the sanctuary. See literary structure. Holiness is found throughout Israel in places, times, people, and things. Leviticus represents a coherent set of arguments, formulated as a sequence of divine speeches to Moses from the newly built tabernacle. Although Leviticus contains a variety of genres, sacrificial definitions, 1 through 5, legal statements, 19, ritual procedures, 6 through 7, short stories, like Leviticus 10, legalistic novellas, like 24, 10 through 23, it is, first and foremost, though, a narrative. Even the most formulaic listing of ritual acts does not exist in a vacuum, but is part of the story of the establishment of the tabernacle and God's communication with Moses from within the tabernacle. The plot of Leviticus takes place over 8 days. Leviticus 1 through 7 is spoken by God to Moses on the day that the tabernacle was erected. Leviticus 8 through 10 takes place over an 8-day period of priestly ordination. Leviticus 11 through 27 is spoken by God to Moses on the 8th day. The ratio of text to time elapsed in Leviticus is unsurpassed anywhere else in the Bible. 27 chapters over 8 days. And even those 8 days pass entirely in only 2 chapters. This focused concentration signals to the reader how crucially important this material is. Indeed, the text's own claim is that it is only by adhering to these practices and regulations that Israel will be able to survive in the Promised Land. Distinctive features of Leviticus. We're almost finished with the introduction. Literally, this is the last introductory study notes, and then we're going to actually be beginning Leviticus, remembering that it is going to be a very dense book, and it is absolutely not for everybody. So finishing distinctive features of the introduction to Leviticus and then diving into it itself, just to understand. And by the way, this is by Joel Baden, and he is somebody who is a very good scholar understanding Old Testament, especially Levitical laws, and then as well the Exodus narratives and so forth, and scholarship on that. So if you ever get a chance, look him up on YouTube, something like that. Look up maybe his internet articles and stuff. Very interesting scholarship on this stuff. Very good understanding of the histories of these peoples from this particular time period, the exilic and post-exilic and so forth. So again, not here to be fluffy, here to get into very dense information, because that's the way I like to go through this stuff. If you want to really get a grip of the core of these things and to understand the best that we can, I think that going as deep as possible with your understanding is the only way you're really going to have one, to some degree. Having very surface level understanding is often not the most healthy thing to try to then go out and expound information. It's just my opinion. If you disagree, hey, I totally respect that and appreciate that. So, distinctive features. Leviticus presents a theology in 2 parts. The first is the P, found in chapters 1 through 16, focused on God and the tabernacle. Israel's sins and impurities are important not because they are morally objectionable, but because they contaminate the sacred space. So again, one thing we're going to be seeing is a distinction between keeping the place holy and clean through the laws that are put in place, very much like seen at the end of Exodus, and as well things that are going to make it impure or dirty and need to be cleansed. So, it is thus the responsibility of every individual to ensure that when they become aware that they have contributed to that contamination, they take the proper sacrificial steps to remove it from the divine abode. The sacrifices are not intended to make the offerer whole; they are rather to make God's home whole. If the tabernacle becomes too, in quotations, dirty, God will abandon it, leaving Israel unprotected. This is therefore a theology of individual responsibility for communal well-being. No one is expected to be perfect, but if every person does his or her part, then everyone will be blessed as a community. One of the big things that we're going to see is kind of like a discussion that I have with a friend of mine very often about the differences between, if you do studies of Eastern practices and beliefs, like ancient Eastern practices versus Near East and Mesopotamia and stuff. When you see ancient Semitic practices versus, for instance, maybe getting into Buddhism, Hinduism, and stuff like that, you are going to see a concept where perhaps Hinduism, while still in most parts, depending on the practice focus point, is going to be about appreciating you doing your part in society and community, a lot of the practice ultimately becomes a spiritual mindfulness of a solo act, whereas the hugest, again, that's generalizing, there's a lot more to it than that, but Semitic belief and so forth is a lot more focused on community. So what you do is very, very important, not just for your eternity, necessarily speaking, which again wasn't necessarily the biggest deal to the Jewish peoples, more so into the Christian times, but what you do affects everyone. So again, no one is expected to be perfect, but if everyone does his or her part, then everyone will be blessed. The high point of God's relationship with Israel is the 8-day period described in these chapters, between God's inhabitation of the tabernacle and the inauguration of the sacrificial cult. These chapters both describe that time of perfect harmony between God and Israel and provide the mechanisms by which it can be maintained and regularly restored. The cult is often represented as rote behavior in hope of divine reward and contrasted with the idea of social good. Leviticus, however, offers an alternative, that the cult can be the means by which individuals contribute to the common good. So, again, just in case it makes anybody uncomfortable with the terminology used, cult, it is not meant to be come across perhaps the way you might be taking it. So the second part of H expands the theological vision beyond the tabernacle and its cult, the holiness of certain people, of time, of sacrifices of God's name, and of vows taken in God's name. All of these are to be carefully preserved. Above all, the holiness of the land must be maintained. This is accomplished not by cleaning up after sins and impurities, but by avoiding sins altogether, certain sins altogether. Here we have another major theological claim. Not only can the tabernacle be contaminated by Israel's sins and impurities, but certain kinds of transgressions and impurities can also contaminate the land itself, which cannot be purified by any ritual offerings. While a dirty tabernacle will force God to leave, a dirty land will cause the eviction of Israel itself. It is thus not only in the sacrificial sphere that the attention must be paid. Rather, these laws require intention and care in all walks of life. Because a grand thing going on here as a whole is that you are to Israel being the chosen people. I talk about this a lot, but the concept to the Israelite people of them being a chosen people was not that we are superior to people. It is you are now held to a high account, and how you as a society, as a community, behave or do not behave is going to impact the way you teach others to act as well as surrounding people. You're to be a light for the world is a big responsibility. It's just the way they perceived it and so forth. So a lot of time there's like this concept of elitism, and it's not really the way they were working off of it. So anyway, though the dimensions are somewhat different across the two main parts, the central understanding of individual responsibility for communal well-being is continuous throughout Leviticus. The reader of Leviticus is advised to read it not as a historical description of actual Israelite cultic practice, there is no evidence that it ever was, but as a theological treatise, albeit one presented in the form of narratively embedded ritual and law, despite or perhaps precisely because of its exceptional, at times perhaps excruciating detail. Leviticus makes an extraordinarily thorough statement about human responsibility for the divine and for the sacred that exist in all parts of life. In its scope and clarity, Leviticus is among all the texts of the Bible the unparalleled as a theological argument. So we are actually going to get into Leviticus 1 now, Leviticus 1 and 2. That was the entire introduction, historical context, all that stuff, understanding Leviticus. We are now going to get into the sacrificial system and talking about burnt offerings and so much more. Understanding that I'm going to be doing Leviticus a lot slower, perhaps. I'm going to read it quickly, but the information I'm going to cover a lot slower than I did through Exodus, through Genesis, because This is not going to be easy for people to chew on because it's just very dense information. That's just the way it is, and so forth. So, starting at Leviticus 1, we're going to do Leviticus 1 through perhaps 4 today. I think I'm going to try to do Leviticus 1 through 4 and then start moving back over to Matthew and go through a handful of other things because I don't want to bog you down way too much. This series, the Levitical series, is going to be a very, like I said, dense series to work through. Most people don't really care to read Leviticus in the first place, which by extension causes a lot of mishandling of laws and texts and picking and choosing, following, and stuff like that. So the Lord summoned Moses and spoke to him from the tent of meeting, saying, Speak to the Israelites and say to them, When any of you bring an offering of livestock to the Lord, you shall bring your offering from the herd or from the flock. If the offering is a burnt offering from the herd, you shall offer a male without blemish. You shall bring it to the entrance of the tent of meeting for acceptance on your behalf before the Lord. You shall lay your hand on the head of the burnt offering, and it shall be acceptable on your behalf as an atonement for you. The bull shall be slaughtered before the Lord, and Aaron's sons, the priests, shall offer the blood, dashing the blood against all sides of the altar that is at the entrance of the tent of meeting. The burnt offering shall be flayed and cut up into parts. The sons of the priest of Aaron shall put fire on the altar and arrange wood on the fire. Aaron's sons, the priests, shall arrange the parts with the head and the suet on the wood that is on the fire on the altar. But its entrails and its legs shall be washed with the water. Then the priest shall turn the rest into smoke on the altar as a burnt offering, an offering by fire, or as well a gift of pleasing odor to the Lord. If your gift for a burnt offering is from the flock, from the sheep or goats, your offering shall be made a male without blemish. Or shall be a male, sorry. It shall be slaughtered on the north side of the altar before the Lord, and Aaron's sons, the priests, shall dash its blood against all the sides of the altar. It shall be cut up into its parts, with its head and its suet, and the priest shall arrange them on the wood that is on the fire of the altar. But the entrails and the legs shall be washed with water. Then the priest shall offer the rest, and turn it into smoke on the altar. It is a burnt offering, it is, an offering by fire or a gift of pleasing odor to the Lord. Real quick, I want to read through talking about the sacrificial system. It is important information to kind of get through as we go through this. In the sacrificial system, sacrifice is a flexible symbol that conveys a variety of possible meanings. The prototypical sacrificial act transfers property from the profane to the sacred realm. In other words, it is a gift to the deity. However, no single theory can explain the entire sacrificial system of any society. The common denominator of the sacrifices discussed in chapters 1 through 7 is that they arise in answer to an unpredictable religious or emotional need. They are thereby set apart from the sacrifices of the public feasts and fasts that are fixed by the calendar. So, continuing forwards, finishing up chapter 1. Again, I know this is going to be very dense information, very boring to a lot of people, but if you really want to kind of get a grasp on this, we have to go through it. There's just no getting around that. So, if your offering to the Lord is a burnt offering of birds, you shall choose your offering from turtle doves or pigeons. The priest shall bring it to the altar and will wring off its head and turn it into smoke on the altar. The priest shall bring it to the altar and wring off its head and smoke on the altar, and its blood shall be drained out against the side of the altar. He shall remove its entrails close to its tail feathers and throw it out the east side of the altar in the place of ashes. He shall tear it open by its wings without severing it. Then the priest shall turn it into smoke on the altar, on the wood that is on its fire. It is a burnt offering, an offering by fire, or a gift of pleasing odor to the Lord. Next up is covering, this is Leviticus 2. This is going to be getting into grain offerings. Just throwing this out there. If anybody should have any questions, if there's anything anybody wants to know about, you're more than welcome to comment below. That's totally fine. I don't mind whatsoever. I'm not going to be able to answer everything, but as we get further into the density of this information, it is going to be good that we can discuss stuff on a deeper level in the comments as well. Just if somebody could real quick, comment below and let me know if things are lagging or if everything's coming across pretty clear before I continue to read, because at the very beginning of this, I was told when I tried this before that it was lagging pretty bad and not easy to comprehend. Not the words, just like the visuals. So somebody could let me know that real quick as I start reading real fast the rest of the study notes about the burnt offering. I would be greatly appreciative of that, so that it's not like driving people crazy and then I'm wasting time. But The burnt offering, the only sacrifice that is entirely consumed on the altar, must be an unblemished male animal from an eligible species of livestock or birds. It is probably the oldest and most common sacrifice. Without blemish in 1:3, the significance of this requirement is vividly underscored by Malachi 1:8. When you offer blind animals in sacrifice, is that not wrong? It says. And when you offer those that are lame or sick, is that not wrong? Try presenting that to your governor. Will he be pleased? Will you or show your favor? The tent of meeting, the wilderness sanctuary, also called the tabernacle, which was contained with a collapsible and portable tent. The tent of meeting was surrounded by a fenced courtyard. The whole courtyard, from its entrance to the entrance of the tent, was accessible to the lay offerer, and was where the preliminary sacrificial rites were performed. So to lean your hand, literally, this rite required pressure. Its purpose is to signify ownership, so that the benefits of the sacrifice will accrue to the donor. Hand leaning was not required whenever the offering could be carried by hand. Cases where ownership was obvious, such as the burnt offering of birds, the grain offering, and the reparation offering with money. So acceptable on your behalf, to be acceptable to God, the sacrifice must be unblemished. This term signals not repentance, but rather purgation. The cleansing of the tabernacle from the accumulated sins and impurities of Israel. This is accomplished primarily through purification and reparation, or guilt offerings, which are at times accompanied by burnt offerings. The burnt offering is not this is a hard word to say, expiatory or purgative by itself. The term is carefully distinguished from burn. The normal term is non-sacrificial incineration, to indicate that the offering is not destroyed, but transformed into smoke so that it can ascend to heaven above, the dwelling place of God, an offering by fire or food gift. So, with that being said, we're going to now, I know, again, this seems like a lot of dense, unnecessary information, but believe me, if we're going to appreciate this and get through it, we need to appreciate it and get through it together as a team and actually do it. Next up, I'm going to be getting into Leviticus 2. So this is, like I said, this is going to be grain offerings. I really appreciate anybody who's taking the time to come through and to do this with me. So, when anyone presents an offering of grain to the Lord, the offering shall be of choice flour. The worshipper shall pour oil on it and put frankincense on it and bring it to Aaron's sons, the priests, after taking from it a handful of the choice flour and oil. With all its frankincense, the priest shall turn this token portion into smoke on the altar, an offering by fire or a gift of pleasing odor to the Lord. And what is left of the grain offering shall be for Aaron and his sons, a most holy part of the offerings by fire and to the Lord. When you present a grain offering baked in the oven, it shall be choice flour, unleavened cakes mixed with an oil, or unleavened wafers spread with oil. If your offering is grain prepared on the griddle, it shall be a choice of flour mixed with oil, unleavened. Break it in pieces and pour oil on it. It is a grain offering. If your offering is grain prepared in a pan, it shall be made of choice flour. Sorry, you guys, just real quick. Trying to get my situation back right. Going forward, you shall bring to the Lord the grain offering that is prepared. Any of these ways, and when it is presented to the priest, he shall take it to the altar. The priest shall remove from the grain offering its token portion, and turn it into this smoke on the altar, an offering by fire, or again a gift of pleasing odor to the Lord. And what is left of the grain shall be for Aaron and his sons. It is a most holy part of the offerings by fire to the Lord. No grain offering that you bring to the Lord shall be made with leaven. For you must not turn any leaven or honey into smoke as an offering by fire to the Lord. You may bring them to the Lord as an offering of choice products, but they shall not be offered on the altar for a pleasing odor. All your grain offerings you shall season with salt. You shall not omit from your grain offerings the salt of the covenant with your Lord, with God, with your God. With all your offerings you shall offer salt. I know, again, I cannot stress enough, I know this seems like a bunch of what does any of this matter. I say this a lot. I'm a very over-explanatory person, and I know this is going to be a lot of stuff people don't care to get through, but believe me, it is important to the development of the peoples. If you bring a grain offering of first fruits to the Lord, you shall bring as the grain offering of the first fruits crushed new grain from the fresh ears roasted in fire. You shall add oil to it and lay frankincense on it. it is a grain offering. And the priest shall turn a token portion of it into smoke. Some of the crushed grain and oil with its frankincense, it is an offering by fire to the Lord. Real quick, it talks about sacrifices here. And this is actually pretty fun stuff to get through. So burnt offerings in Leviticus 1, 6, 8 through 13, a bull, sheep, goat, or bird, the whole animal is burned. Grain offering, Leviticus 2, 6, 14 through 23, is fine flour or unleavened baked goods mixed with oil. A handful of the offering was burned, the rest given to the priest. Sacrifice for well-being, bull, sheep, or goat. The fat, kidneys, and part of the liver were burned. The rest was divided to the priest and the offerer. Purification offering, depending on the status of the offerer. The offering repaired the relationship between human beings and God. Lastly is the guilt offering. Bull, sheep, or goat. The fat, kidneys, and part of the liver were burned. The animal's flesh was eaten by the priests. When they performed sacrifices, ancient Israelites gave to God some of what they believed God had given them. In so doing, God enjoyed a fellowship meal with humans in God's dwelling on earth. So the fragrance and so much going on there. Let me see. Next, we're going to get into offerings of well-being. So this is going to be Leviticus 3 and then Leviticus 4. As I'm very aware, this is not always going to be a very popular series, but this is something I'm very passionate about. Bug Dog? Oh, you meant Big Dog. What's up, buddy? I'm super happy to see you here this morning. Now that you're here, can you please let me know, because nobody else has, am I coming through pretty good? And I like Bug Dog. I'm going to be Bug Dog. Can you let me know if this is coming through well? Am I lagging really bad? Are you able to see me? Because I tried to stream earlier, and as I was getting going, I was told that it wasn't going very well, that it was lagging really bad, and I don't know why, because it says I have fantastic service right now, but I don't want to drive people crazy. So if you could, just let me know if everything's all clear. Thank you. Oh my goodness, thank you. I've been so worried. I've been doing this for 46 minutes. I've been worried that everything I've been reading is like not happening or being able to be received. So I appreciate that so very much. All right, real quick, I'm gonna pop this. Uh-oh, whoopsie. Sorry, you guys. I'm gonna pop my window open, get a little bit of fresh air in this bad boy. Ironically, it's actually going pretty good today. It's not necessarily very warm out. I just it's nice to have a little bit of air coming through, and I'm in the woods. Oh, heck yeah, that's awesome. So offerings of well-being. If the offering is a sacrifice of well-being, if you offer an animal from the herd, whether male or female, you shall offer one without blemish before the Lord. You shall lay your hand on the head of the offering and slaughter it at the entrance of the tent of meeting. And Aaron's sons, the priests, shall dash the blood against all sides of the altar. Just a quick side note, like we read through the study notes. They actually saw it as the laying of the hand, putting the pressure from the hand on it from you as an active part of this is actually being like important. It's a piece of what you have to do here. You shall offer from the sacrifice of well-being as an offering by fire or a gift to the Lord. The fat that covers the entrails and all the fat that is around the entrails. The 2 kidneys with the fat that is on them at the loins, and the appendage of the liver, which he shall remove with the kidneys. Then Aaron's sons shall turn these into smoke on the altar, with the burnt offering that is on the wood of the fire, an offering by fire, a pleasing odor to the Lord. If your offering for a sacrifice of well-being to the Lord is from the flock, male or female, you shall offer one without blemish. If you present a sheep as your offering, you shall bring it before the Lord, and lay your hand on the head of the offering. It shall be slaughtered before the tent. What is happening? Oh, whoopsie. What? There we go. Sorry, you guys. A little bit all over the place right now, but it's okay. So, excuse me. If you offer a sacrifice of well-being to the Lord is from the flock, male or female, you shall offer one without blemish. If you present sheep as your offering, you shall bring it before the Lord and lay your hand on the head of the offering. It shall be slaughtered before the tent of meeting, and Aaron's son shall dash his blood. You shall present its fat from the sacrifice of well-being as an offering by fire to the Lord, the whole fatty tail, which shall be removed close to the bone, the fat that covers the entrails and all the fat that is around the entrails, the 2 kidneys with the fat that is on them at the loins, and the appendage of the liver. By the way, if anybody's eating breakfast right now, I'm very sorry about this. So, and the appendage of the liver, which you shall remove with the kidneys. The priest shall turn them into smoke on the altar as an offering by fire to the Lord. If your offering is a goat, you shall bring it before the Lord, and lay your hand on its head. It shall be slaughtered before the tent of meeting, and the sons of Aaron shall dash its blood against all sides of the altar. You shall present as your offering from it, as an offering by fire or a gift to the Lord, the fat that covers the entrails, and all the fat that is around the entrails, the two kidneys with the fat that is on them, and the loins, the appendage of the liver, which you shall remove the kidneys. Then the priest shall turn these into smoke on the altar as a food offering by fire for the pleasing odor. It consistently talks about being a food gift. All the fat is the Lord's. It shall be a perpetual statute throughout your generations in all your settlements. You must not eat any fat or blood. Now, lastly, I'm going to stop today not today, I'm not going to stop the stream, but I'm going to finish this particular section going through Leviticus with Leviticus 4, the purification offerings. Because like I said, this stuff is stuff that hopefully people or just one of you guys is going to listen to and that we're going to go through together. But because it's so dense, people don't really often care about this. It's just the facts. People like to use Levitical laws a lot against one another, really just sullying and completely muddling up context, historical value, or any of that stuff, even development, where they come from, what they were for. People do that a lot. That's kind of how people handle the Bible very often. The Bible is a very funny thing because large chunks of it, people, like, not large chunks, little nuggets, people will take out as ammunition for whatever, theological interpretations or cultural, social circumstances that they stand for, and then things that they don't care for, they just start throw it to the wayside. Doesn't matter. I don't need to know about it. Out of sight, out of mind. Doesn't matter. I don't need to understand this. I don't need to talk about this. Cool. But anything that fits your cultural milieu, whatever little group you're a part of, whatever theology you subscribe to, that now you have your little revolver and you go nicking out your little bullets you want to put into it. That is the way that it goes very often amongst denomination to denomination, society from society, and the same thing happens with other beliefs as well. But if we can go through all of the information, hear what's happening here, really let it settle on us. What does this mean to me? Does this mean anything to me? Is this to other peoples of a certain time? Is there a purpose behind this? Then we can start to kind of grapple with this in a different kind of way and make something more meaningful out of it. As well, very often, then we can hear when people are weaponizing things in an unnecessary way. We can hopefully, respectfully, encourage them to reconsider what they're doing, what they're standing on, and kind of discuss it together in a more functional fashion. So, purification offerings. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the Israelites, saying, When anyone sins unintentionally in any of the Lord's commandments about things not to be done and does any of them, if it is anointed priest who sins, thus bringing guilt on the people, he shall offer for the sin that he committed a bull of the herd as a purification offering to the Lord. He shall bring the bull to the entrance of the tent of meeting before the Lord, and lay his hand on the head of the bull. The bull shall be slaughtered before the Lord. The anointed priest, I almost thought it said the annoyed priest. I was about to say, uh-oh. He's like, get out of here. Don't bother me. I'm trying to chill. The anointed priest shall take some of the blood of the bull and bring it to the tent of meeting. The priest shall dip his finger in the blood and sprinkle some of the blood 7 times before the Lord in front of the curtain of the sanctuary. The priest shall put some of the blood on the horns of the altar of fragrant incense that is in the tent of meeting before the Lord, and the rest of the blood of the bull he shall pour out at the base of the altar of the burnt offering, which is at the entrance of the tent of meeting. He shall remove all the fat from the bull of purification offering, the fat that covers the entrails and all the fat that is around the entrails, and the 2 kidneys with the fat that is on them at the loins, and the lobe of the liver, which he shall remove with the kidneys, just as these are removed from the ox, the sacrifice of well-being. The priest shall turn them into smoke upon the altar of burnt offering. But the skin of the bull and its flesh, as well as its head, its legs, its entrails, and its dung, yucky. All the rest of the bull he shall carry out to a clean place outside the camp, to the ash heap, and shall burn it on a wood fire. At the ash heap it shall be burned. If the whole congregation of Israel errs unintentionally, and the matter escapes the notice of the assembly, and they do any one of these things that the Lord's commandments ought not to be done, and incur guilt, when the sin that they have committed becomes known, the assembly shall offer a bull of the herd for a purification offering, and bring it before the tent of meeting. The elders of the congregation shall lay their hands on the head of the bull before the Lord, and the bull shall be slaughtered before the Lord. By the way, once again, if you're eating breakfast, I'm sorry. The anointed priests shall bring some of the blood of the bull into the tent of meeting, and the priest shall dip his finger in the blood and sprinkle it 7 times before the Lord in front of the curtain. He shall put some of the blood of the horns of the altar, blood on the horns of the altar that is before the Lord in the tent of meeting, and the rest of the blood he shall pour out at the base of the altar of burnt offering, that is the entrance of the tent of meeting. He shall remove all its fat and turn it into smoke on the altar. He shall do with the bull just as done with the bull of purification offering. He shall do with the same with this. The priest shall make atonement for them, and they shall be forgiven. He shall carry the bull outside the camp and burn it as he burned the first bull. It's purification offering for the assembly. When a ruler sins, doing unintentionally any one of the things commanded by the Lord that his God he ought not to be done, and incurs guilt, once the sin that he has committed is made known to him, he shall bring as his offering a male goat without blemish. He shall lay his hand on the head of the goat. It shall be slaughtered at the spot where the burnt offering is slaughtered before the Lord, and purification offering. The priest shall take some of the blood of the purification offering with his finger, and put it on the horns of the altar of the burnt offering, and pour out the rest of its blood at the base of the altar. All its fat, he shall turn into smoke on the altar, like the fat of the sacrifice of well-being. Thus the priest shall make atonement on his behalf for his sin he shall be forgiven. If any one of the ordinary people among you sins unintentionally, doing one of these things the Lord's commandments say ought not to be done, and incurs guilt, when that sin you have committed is made known to you, you shall bring a female goat without blemish as your offering for the sin that you've committed. You shall lay your hand on the head of the purification offering. The purification offering shall be slaughtered at the place of the offering. The priest shall take some of its blood with his finger and put it on the horns of the altar of burnt offering. He shall pour out the rest of its blood at the base of the altar. He shall remove all its fat, as the fat is removed from the sacrifice of well-being, and the priest shall turn it into smoke on the altar, for a pleasing odor to the Lord. Thus the priest shall make atonement on your behalf, and you shall be forgiven. If the offering you bring as purification is a sheep, you shall bring a female without blemish. You shall lay your hand on the head of the purification offering. It shall be slaughtered as a purification offering at the spot where the burnt offering is slaughtered. The priest shall take some of the blood of purification offering with his finger and put it on the horns of the altar of burnt offering. You're going to see a lot of this is recycled stuff. You shall remove all of its fat as the fat of the sheep is removed from the sacrifice of well-being. And the priest shall turn it into a smoke on the altar with the offerings of fire or a gift to the Lord. Thus the priest shall make atonement on your behalf for the sin that you've committed, and you shall be forgiven. So I'm going to stop there at Leviticus 4 today. As far as Leviticus goes, we've read a lot, the entire introduction of Leviticus, all that jazz. So I'm going, like I said, not anymore is basically needed on that front. Now I'm going to be moving over to Matthew. Just want to say, I thank you guys for taking the time whenever you do come here for these Bible study streams. I know I'm not exciting to watch. I know it's not the most exciting stuff to listen to. These things are a passion for me, and so as somebody who likes to get the time to do this together, it means a lot to me that even just one person would take the time to listen, to share your thoughts when you do, and to comment and stuff. It's really cool to think that there are people who care to learn together out there instead of just kind of waking up and rolling with it. So, like I said, thank you for coming through here. There's some stuff I'm going to say at the end of this that, may or may not matter to anybody ever. But I'm going to continue reading now in Romans 12. By the way, happy Sunday as well. I hope you are all having a beautiful morning, and I really appreciate you. Seriously. So, this is my favorite passage, one of my favorite passages in the entire Bible. This is in the New Testament. This is Romans 12. I actually read this as we're working through it. I read this at the end of every single stream. In general, for a reason, but this morning is just where we happen to be at, so I don't actually have to go back and read it. This is the new life in Christ. I've read this a lot, but now we're going to read it and then move forwards from it. I appeal to you, therefore, brothers and sisters, on the basis of mercy, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your reasonable act of worship. Do not be conformed to this age, but be transformed by the renewing of the mind, so that you may discern what is the will of God, what's good, acceptable, and perfect. Also, other than perfect, it says what's good and acceptable in the perfect will of God. For by the grace given to me, I say to everyone among you not to think of yourself more highly than you ought to think, but to think with sober judgment, each according to the measure of faith that God has assigned. For as in one body we have many members, and not all members have the same function. So we who are many are one body in Christ, and individually we are members of one another. And we have gifts that differ according to the grace given to us. Prophecy in proportion to faith, ministry in ministering, the teacher in teaching, the encourager in encouragement, the giver in sincerity, the leader in diligence, and the compassionate in cheerfulness. So this is my favorite part, the marks of a true Christian. This is Romans 12:9. In a lot of Bibles it's titled this way. Let's get on into it. Let love be genuine. Normally I'll jump over real quick to 1 Corinthians 13 so we can actually talk about what love is, but I'm going to keep going. Love be genuine, hate what is evil. Hold fast to what is good. Love one another with mutual affection. Outdo one another in showing honor. Do not lag in zeal. Be ardent in spirit. Serve the Lord. Rejoice in hope. Be patient in affliction and persevere in prayer. Contribute to the needs of the saints and pursue hospitality to strangers. Very important stuff. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse them. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Weep with those who weep. Live in harmony with one another. Do not be arrogant, but associate with the lowly. Do not claim to be wiser than you are. Um, do not repay evil for evil, but take thought for what is noble in the sight of all. If it's possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with everyone. Beloved, never avenge yourselves, but leave room for the wrath of God, for it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. Instead, if your enemies are hungry, feed them. If they're thirsty, give them something to drink. For by doing this, you'll heap burning coals on their heads. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. That's Romans 12. That's one of my favorite passages to read very often. Now, being subject to authorities. This is going to be Romans 13 that we're diving into. Let every person be subject to governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and those authorities that exist have been instituted by God. Therefore, whoever resists authority resists what God has appointed, and those who resist will incur judgment. For rulers are not a terror to good conduct, but to bad. Do you wish to have no fear of that authority? Then do what's good, and you'll receive its approval. For it is God's agent for your good. But if you do what is wrong, you should be afraid, for the authority does not bear the sword in vain. It is the agent of God to execute wrath on the wrongdoer. Therefore, one must be subject, not only because of wrath, but also because of conscience. For the same reason, you also pay taxes, for the authorities are God's agents. Busy with this very thing, pay to all what is due to them. Taxes to whom taxes are due, revenue to whom revenue is due, respect to whom respect is due, honor to whom honor is due. Love for one another. We're reading Romans 13 in case anybody pops in. Owe no one anything except to love one another. For the one who loves another has fulfilled the law. The commandments, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not murder, you shall not steal, you shall not covet, and any other commandment are summed up in this word: you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Love does no wrong to a neighbor, therefore love is the fulfilling of the law. Very important passage there. Besides this, you know what time it is. Now, how it is already the moment for you to wake up from sleep. For salvation is nearer to us now than when we became believers. The night is far gone. The day is near. Let us then throw off the works of darkness and put on the armor of light. Let us walk decently as in the day, not in reveling and drunkenness, not in illicit sex and licentiousness, not in quarreling and jealousy. Instead, put on the Lord Jesus Christ and make no provision for the flesh to gratify the desires. So, that is Romans 13. And if it seems like I'm having to wrap it up a little bit quickly, that's because we already went through a lot of information this morning, but I do have a little bit of time left before I actually have to make my way over to get to church this morning with my wife and my father-in-law. So I'm going to read a few more passages. We are now on Matthew 10. I'm going to read Matthew 10 today and Matthew 11. And then after that, I'm going to be doing a little bit of discussing as I make my journey the rest of the way home for the day, kind of about this channel as a whole and perhaps where I'm at with some things. And it's stuff that I feel is important, but it really is just up to you guys. How you feel about it, but I appreciate you so very much to everybody who's taken the time, like I always say, to stop through, to listen, to be here with me. It's very much something that I could never have dreamed I'd get to do, is just to sit here and read, and anybody would be a part of it. So, like I said, got some channel updates as a whole. Just depends on how different people are going to feel about that, but that's okay. It's kind of the opposite direction of where I was discussing going just weeks and weeks ago. And again, you just never really know what's going to happen in life and what's going to inspire you and happen for you as a person. So, with that being said, sorry guys, give me just a second. All right. Sorry, one more time. I know this stream has been a little bit all over the place and it's been a little difficult for everybody, but there's reasons for that. So, we're going to Matthew 10 now. Then Jesus Then Jesus summoned his 12 disciples and gave them authority over unclean spirits to cast them out, to cure every disease and every sickness. These are the names of the 12 apostles. First, Simon, also known as Peter, his brother Andrew, James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John, Philip and Bartholomew, Thomas and Matthew the tax collector, James, son of Alphaeus and Thaddeus, Simon the Cananaean, and Judas Iscariot, the one who betrayed him. Uh, Always kind of tickled me that they went ahead and threw that out there, even though you're supposed to kind of wait till later on. Then Jesus summoned his 12 disciples and gave, these 12 Jesus sent out with the following instructions. Do not take a road leading to Gentiles, and do not enter a Samaritan town, but go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. As you go, proclaim the good news. The kingdom of heaven has come near. Cure the sick, raise the dead, cleanse those with the skin disease, cast out demons. You receive without payment, give without payment. Take no gold or silver or copper in your belts, no bag for your journey, or 2 tunics, or sandals, or a staff, for laborers deserve their food. Whatever town or village you enter, find out who in it is worthy, and stay there until you leave. As you enter the house, greet it. If the house is worthy, let your peace come upon it. But if it is not worthy, let your peace return to you. If anyone will not welcome you or listen to your words, shake off the dust from your feet as you leave the house or the town. Truly I tell you, it will be more tolerable for the land of Sodom and Gomorrah on the day of judgment than for that town. I am sending you out like sheep into the midst of wolves, so be wise as serpents and innocent as doves. Beware of them, for they will hand you over to councils and flog you in their synagogues, and you will be dragged before governors and kings because of me, as a testimony to them and the Gentiles. When they hand you over, do not worry about how you are to speak or what you are to say, for what you are to say will be given to you at that time. It is not you who speak, but the Spirit of your Father speaking through you. Sibling will betray sibling to death, and father his child, and children will raise against parents and have them put to death. You'll be hated because of my name by all, but the one who endures to the end will be saved. When they persecute you in this town, flee to the next, for truly I tell you, you will not have finished going through all the towns of Israel before the Son of Man comes. A disciple is not above the teacher, nor a slave above master. It is enough for the disciple to be like the teacher, and slave like master. If they have called the master of the house Beelzebul, how much more will they malign those of the household? So have no fear of them, for nothing is covered up that will not be uncovered, and nothing secret that will not become known. What I say to you in the dark, tell it in the light, and what you hear whispered, proclaim from the housetops. Do not fear those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul. Rather, fear the one who can destroy both the soul and the body in Gehenna. A lot of these texts will translate it to hell, but the reality is it's Gehenna. Are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny? Yet not one of them falls to the ground apart from your Father. And even the hairs on your head are all counted. So do not be afraid, you are of more value than many sparrows. Everyone, therefore, who acknowledges me before others, I will acknowledge before my Father in heaven. Whoever denies me before others, I will deny before my Father in heaven. Do not think that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I have not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I have come to set man against father, daughter against mother, daughter-in-law against mother-in-law. Foes will be members of one's own household. Whoever loves the father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. Whoever loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. Whoever does not take up the cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Those who find their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake will find it. Whoever welcomes you welcomes me, and whoever welcomes me welcomes the one who sent me. Whoever welcomes a prophet in the name of the prophet will receive a prophet's reward. Whoever welcomes a righteous person in the name of a righteous person will receive the reward of the righteous. Whoever gives even a cup of cold water to one of these little ones in the name of a disciple, truly I tell you, none of these will lose their reward. Next, we are moving into Matthew 11 now. So now when Jesus had finished instructing the 12 disciples, he went on from there to teach and proclaim his message in their cities, and said to them, Are you the one who is to come, or are we to wait for another? Jesus answered, Go and tell John what you hear and see, and blind receive their sight, the lame walk, those with a skin disease are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, and the poor have good news brought to them. And blessed is anyone who takes no offense at me. Now the next title is Jesus praises John the Baptist. As they went away, Jesus began to speak to the crowds about John. What did you go out into the wilderness to look at? A reed shaken by the wind? What then did you go out to see? Someone dressed in soft robes? Look, those who wear soft robes are in royal palaces. What then did you go out to see? A prophet? Yes, I tell you, and more than a prophet. This is one about whom it is written, see, I'm sending my messenger ahead of you, who will prepare your way before you. Truly I tell you, among those born of woman, no one has arisen greater than John the Baptist, yet the least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than he. From the days of John the Baptist until now, the kingdom of heaven has suffered violence. Or down here it also says, let me read it, coming violently. So, sorry you guys, and violent people take it by force. For all the prophets and the law prophesied until John came, and if you are willing to accept it, he is Elijah who is to come. Let anyone with ears listen. But to what will I compare this generation? It is like children sitting in the marketplaces and calling to one another. We played the flute for you, and you did not dance. We wailed, and you did not mourn. For John came neither, eating nor drinking, and they say he has a demon. The Son of Man came eating and drinking, and they said, look, a glutton, a drunkard, a friend of tax collectors and sinners. Yet wisdom is vindicated by their deeds. So, moving forwards, then he began to reproach the cities in which most of the deeds of power had been done, because they did not repent. Woe to you, Chorazin! Woe to you, Bethsaida! For if the deeds of power done in you had been done in Tyre and Sidon, they would have repented long ago in sackcloth and ashes. But I tell you, on the day of judgment, it will be more tolerable for Tyre and Sidon than for you. And you, Capernaum, will be exalted to heaven? No, you'll be thrown down to Hades. For if the deeds of power done in you had been done in Sodom, it would have been remained until this day. But I will tell you that on that day of judgment it will be more tolerable for the land of Sodom than for you. Next, we are going to be reading the final parts of Matthew 11. It says Jesus thanks his Father. And then we're going to move over into Psalms and then wrap this baby up. At that time, Jesus said, I thank you, Father, Lord of heaven, or I praise you, because you have hidden things from the wise, and these things from the wise and the intelligent have revealed them to infants. Yes, Father, for such was your gracious will. All things have been handed over to me by my Father, and no one knows the Son except the Father, no one knows the Father except the Son, and anyone to whom the Son chooses to reveal him. Come to me, all you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me. For I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. That is going to be the end of Matthew for today. I'm so sorry, forgive me. Now I am going to read a little bit more of Psalms. Today is going to be Psalm 40. This says thanksgiving for deliverance and prayer for help. This is going to be Psalms 40. I waited patiently for the Lord. He inclined to me and heard my cry. He drew me up from the desolate pit, or as well, talking about from the pit of tumult, out of the miry bog. And he set my feet upon a rock, making my steps secure. He put a new song in my mouth, a song of praise to our God. Many will see and fear and put the trust in the Lord. Happy are those who make the Lord their trust, who do not turn to the proud, to those who go astray after false gods. You have multiplied, O Lord my God, your wondrous deeds and your thoughts toward us. None can compare to you. Were I to proclaim and tell them, they would be more than to be counted. Sacrifice and offering you do not desire, but you have given me an open ear. Burnt offering and sin offering you have not required. Then I said, here I am. In the scroll, the book, it is written of me. To delight to do your will, O my God, your law is written within my heart. I have told the glad news of deliverance in the great congregation. See, I have not restrained my lips. As you know, O Lord, I have not hidden your saving help within my heart. I have spoken of your faithfulness and your salvation. I have not concealed your steadfast love and your faithfulness from the great congregation. Do not, O Lord, withhold your mercy from me. Let your steadfast love and your faithfulness keep me safe forever. My iniquities have overtaken me until I cannot see. They are more than the hairs on my head, and my heart fails me. Be pleased, O Lord, to deliver me, O Lord. Make haste to help me. Let all those be put to shame and confusion who seek to snatch away my life. Let those be turned back and be brought to dishonor who desire my hurt. Let those be appalled because of their shame who say to me, aha, aha, that's a funny one. But may all those who seek you rejoice and be glad in you. May those who lose your salvation say continually, Great is the Lord. As for me, I'm poor and needy, but the Lord takes thought for me. You are my help and my deliverer. Do not delay, oh my God. Now, Psalm 41, assurance and a plea for healing. This is Psalm 41. Happy are those, let me make sure. Yes, we're good to go. Happy are those who consider the poor. The Lord delivers them in the day of trouble. The Lord protects them and keeps them alive. Give me just a second, you guys. Let me get a little bit of fresh air coming in this bad boy right quick. The Lord protects them and keeps them alive. They are called happy in the land. You do not give them up to the will of their enemies. The Lord sustains them on their sick bed, and in their illness you heal them of their infirmities. Or as well it says at the bottom, change all his bed. As for me, I said, O Lord, be gracious to me. Heal me, for I've sinned against you. My enemies wonder in malice when I will die and my name perish. And when they come to see me, they utter empty words. While their heads gather mischief, when they go out, they tell it abroad. All who hate me whisper together about me. They imagine the worst for me. They think that a deadly thing has fastened on me, that I will not rise again from where I lie. Even my close friend in whom I'm trusted, who ate my bread, has lifted the heel against me. But you, O Lord, be gracious to me. Raise me up, that I may repay them. By this I know that you are pleased with me, because my enemy has not triumphed over me. But you have upheld me against my integrity, because of my integrity, and set me in your presence forever. Blessed be the Lord, the God of Israel, for everlasting to everlasting. Amen. Amen. All right. That is going now. It starts, so Psalms 42 through 72 is what's called in the book of Psalms. We have now entered into that zone. That's pretty neat. We're going to be getting there the next time that I get the chance to do this. But at this point, I am closing out on time that I actually have to continue forward. So I'm going to be reading a little bit more, actually, of Isaiah. I'm going to read 2 more chapters of Isaiah this morning. Hey, old man, guess who's back? No, my goodness. I'm so happy to see you here. Let me take a wild guess. You changed your name again, huh? Super happy to see you there, my friend. I'm very glad that you came through this morning. So I'm going to be doing some updates about the channel. But before I do, I am going to real quick read Isaiah 21. No, you know what? I'm not going to do that. I am going to go back and read one more chapter of Matthew real quick, because that's actually something that's very important for me right now. Telling the story of the Gospel of Matthew. But I'm very happy to see you here, and it brings me a lot of joy this morning that you popped through. How's your legs? Since I've been sitting in a chair this morning, my legs are fantastic. They are, well, I'm not gonna lie to you. I actually a little bit on the tired side, just a little bit, but overall I'm doing pretty good. So I'm gonna read through real fast of Matthew 12. So at that time, Jesus went through the grain fields on the Sabbath. His disciples were hungry, and they began to pluck heads of grain and to eat. When the Pharisees saw it, they said to him, Look, your disciples are doing what's not lawful to do on the Sabbath. He said to them, Have you not read what David did when he and his companions were hungry? This is one of the situations where I say that as we've been reading through the Old Testament, if you don't actually pay close attention to certain things that are mentioned, you will not see how everything comes to tie together down the road. And this is one of those very things that ties together, importantly, to some other stuff that we read. But it won't make a lot of sense if you don't know the stories. Have you not read what David did when he and his companions were hungry? How he entered the house of God, and they ate the bread of presence, which was not lawful for him or his companions to eat, but only for the priests? Or have you not read in the law that on the Sabbath the priests in the temple break the Sabbath and yet are guiltless? I tell you, something greater than the temple is here. But if you had known what this means, I desire mercy and not sacrifice, you would not have condemned the guiltless, for the Son of Man is the Lord of Sabbath. So if you recall, not very long before this same passage, when we read through Matthew 9, it says, when they are condemning him, it says, Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners? He said, when he heard this, those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. Go learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice, for I have come to call not the righteous, but sinners. So it's very important. Make a video on what is the meaning of your life, the meaning of my personal life, or the meaning of life in general. But I could do that at some point. But anyway, for the Son, I desire mercy and not sacrifice. You would not have condemned the guiltless, for the Son of Man is the Lord of Sabbath. He left the place and entered the synagogue, their synagogue. A man who was there with a withered hand, and a man was there with a withered hand, and they asked him, "Is it lawful to cure on the Sabbath?" So that they might accuse him. This is where we start seeing them trying to constantly, entrap Jesus. So he says, "Is it lawful?" Excuse me. To them, suppose one of you has only one sheep and it falls into a pit on the Sabbath. Will you not lay hold of it and lift it out? How much more valuable is a human being than a sheep? So it is lawful to do good on the Sabbath. Then he said to the man, "Stretch out your hand." He stretched it out, and he restored it, as sound as the other. But the Pharisees went out and conspired against him, how to destroy him. When Jesus became aware of this, he departed. He departed. Many followed him, and he cured all of them, and he ordered them not to make him known. This was to fulfill what had been spoken through the prophet Isaiah. "Here is my servant, whom I have chosen, my beloved, with whom my soul is well pleased. I will put my spirit upon him, and he will proclaim justice to the Gentiles. He will not wrangle or cry aloud, nor will anyone hear his voice in the street. He will not break a bruised reed or quench a to victory, and his name to the Gentiles bring hope." Then they brought him to a demon-possessed man who was blind and mute, and he cured him, so that one who had been mute could speak and see. All the crowds were amazed and were saying, "Can this be the son of David?" But when the Pharisees heard it, they said, "It's only by Beelzebul, the ruler of demons, that this man cast out demons." He knew what they were thinking, and said to them, "Every kingdom divided against itself is laid to waste, and no city or house divided against itself will stand. If Satan cast out Satan, he's divided against himself. So how then will his kingdom stand? If I cast out demons by Beelzebul, by whom do your exorcists," or down here it also says, sorry, let me make sure I'm looking at the right notes, because I love looking at by whom your exorcist or son, your own sons, cast them out. "Therefore they will be your judges. But if it is by the Spirit of God that I cast out demons, then the kingdom of God has come upon you. Or how can one enter a strong man's house and plunder his property without first tying up the strong man? Then indeed the house can be plundered. Whoever is not with me is against me, and whoever does not gather with me scatters. Therefore I tell you, people will be forgiven for every sin and blasphemy, but blasphemy against the Holy Spirit will not be forgiven. Whoever speaks a word against the Son of Man will be forgiven, but whoever speaks against the Holy Spirit will not be forgiven, either in this age or in the age to come." There is a lot of argument or debate throughout time of what it means to be blaspheming of the Holy Spirit. That's just the way that it is. There has been a constant, like, what does this mean? What does it mean to blaspheme the Holy Spirit? Truth is, a breakdown, as far as most people can kind of understand, is basically that it is to just deny God, for the most part, to deny who God is. It's like saying GD or something like that. Uh-oh, I'm sorry. I realized that I lost service there for a second. I think that's what happened. But anyway, we're going to read a tree and its fruit. "Either make the tree good and its fruit good, or make the tree bad and its fruit bad. For the tree is known by its fruit. You brood of vipers, how can you speak good things when you are evil? For out of abundance of the heart the mouth speaks. The good person brings good things out of a good treasure, and the evil person brings evil things out of the evil treasure. I tell you, on the day of judgment you will have to give an account for every careless word you uttered. For by your words you will be justified, and by your words you will be condemned." Then some of the scribes and Pharisees said to him, "Teacher, we wish to see a sign from you." But he answered, "An evil and adulterous generation asks for a sign, but no sign will be given to them except the sign of the prophet Jonah. For just as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the sea monster, so for 3 days and 3 nights the Son of Man will be in the heart of the earth. The people of Nineveh will raise up the judgment with this generation and condemn it, because they repented at the proclamation of Jonah. And indeed, something greater than Jonah is here. The queen of the south will rise up at the judgment with this generation and condemn it, because she came from the ends of the earth to listen to the wisdom of Solomon, and indeed something greater than Solomon is here. When the unclean spirit has gone out, a person of it wanders through waterless regions, looking for a resting place, but it finds none. Then it says, I will return to my house from which I came. When it returns, it finds it empty, swept, and put in order. Then it goes and brings along 7 other spirits more evil than itself, and they enter and live there. The last state of that person is worse than the first, so it will be also with this evil generation. While he was still speaking to the crowds, his mother and his brothers were standing outside wanting to speak to him. Someone told him, "Look, your mother and your brothers are standing outside wanting to speak to you." But to one whom had told him this, Jesus replied, "Who is my mother and who are my brothers?" And pointed to his disciples and said, "Here are my mother and brothers. For whoever does the will of my Father in heaven is my brother and my sister and my mother." So next up, I'm going to finish this off today with reading Matthew 13, because I really appreciate Matthew 13, and then I'm going to have some discussions and announcements about the channel at large. Again, I'm Andrew Douglas Moon. If anybody's new here, I appreciate you taking the time to stop through. I appreciate you taking the time to even watch any of this whatsoever. This has definitely been one of those ones that's a lot more dense information. It's just really not for everybody, and that's okay, because everything wasn't meant to be for everybody. This information's for everybody, but not everybody's going to have as much interest in it. So the parable of the sower, this is one of my favorites. And I definitely can't wait for the time that we get to Luke. Feel free to ask questions should you have any below, if you want to know anything, if I can help. The same day Jesus went out of the house and sat beside the sea. Such great crowds gathered around him that he got into a boat and sat there, while the whole crowd stood on the beach. And he told them many things in parables, saying, "Listen, a sower went out to sow. And as he sowed, some seeds fell on a path, and the birds came and ate them up, while other seeds fell on rocky ground, where they did not have much soil, and they sprang up quickly, since they had no depth of soil. But when the sun rose, they were scorched, and since they had no root, they withered away. Other seeds fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked them. Other seeds fell on good soil and brought forth grain, some 100-fold, some 60, some 30, and if you have ears, hear." Then the disciples came and asked, "Why do you speak to them in parables?" He answered, "To you it has been given to know the secrets of the kingdom of heaven, but to them it has not been given. For to those who have, more will be given, and those who have an abundance. But from those who have nothing, even what they have will be taken away. The reason I speak to them in parables is so that seeing they do not perceive, and hearing they do not listen, nor do they understand. With them indeed is fulfilled the prophecy of Isaiah that says, 'You will indeed listen, but never understand. You will indeed look, but never perceive. For this people's heart has grown dull, and their ears are hard for hearing, and they have shut their eyes, so that they might not look with their eyes, and hear with their ears, and understand with their heart, and turn, and I would heal them.' But blessed are your eyes, for they see, and your ears, for they hear. Truly I tell you, many prophets and righteous people longed to see what you see, but did not see it, and to hear what you hear, but did not hear it. Hear then the parable of the sower. When anyone hears the word of the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches it away. What is sown in the heart, that is what is sown on the path. As for what was sown on rocky ground, this is the one who hears the word and immediately receives it with joy. Yet such a person has no root, but endures only for a while. And when trouble or persecution arises on the account of the world or on the word, that person immediately falls away. And as for what was sown among thorns, this is the one who hears the word, but the cares of this age and the lure of wealth choke the word, and it yields nothing. But as for what was sown on good soil, this is the one who hears the word and understands it. He indeed bears fruit and yields it, in one case 100-fold, in another 60, and another 30. He put before them another parable. The kingdom of heaven may be compared to someone who sowed good seed in his field. But while everybody was asleep, an enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat, and then went away. So when the plants came up and bore grain, then the weeds appeared as well. And the slaves of the householder came and said to him, "Master, did you not sow good seeds in your field? Where then did these weeds come from?" He answered, "An enemy has done this." The slave said to him, "Then do you want us to go gather them?" He replied, "No, for in gathering the weeds you would uproot the wheat along with them. Let both of them grow together until harvest. And at harvest time I will tell the reapers, collect the weeds first and bind them in bundles to be burned, but gather the wheat in my barn." Right now we are working our way through Matthew 13. Just getting a little bit extra done this morning while we have the opportunity to do so. And then I've got, like I said, going to be making a little bit of announcements at the very end of this about the channel going forwards. So, the parable of the mustard seed. He put before them another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed that someone took and sowed in his field. It is the smallest of all the seeds. When it has grown into the largest of shrubs and become a tree, so that the birds of the air come and make nests in branches, He told them another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like yeast with a woman took and mixed in with 3 measures of flour until all was leavened. Jesus told the crowds all these things in parables. Without a parable, he told them nothing. This was to fulfill what had been spoken through the prophet. I will open my mouth to speak in parables. I will proclaim what has been hidden since the foundation. When he left the crowds and went into the house, and his disciples approached him, saying, "Explain to us the parable of the weeds of the field." He answered, "The one who sows the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world, and the good seed are the children of the kingdom. The weeds are the children of the evil one, and the enemy who sowed them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the age, and the reapers are angels. Just as the weeds are collected and burned up with fire, so it will be at the end of the age. The Son of Man will send his angels, and they will collect all of his kingdoms of sin and evildoers. And they will throw them into the furnace of fire, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Then the righteous will shine like the sun in their kingdom and their Father. Let anyone with ears listen. The kingdom of heaven is like treasure hidden in a field, which a man found and reburied. Then in his joy he goes out and sells all that he had and buys that field. On finding one pearl of great value, he went and sold all that he had and bought it. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a net that was thrown into the sea and caught every kind. When it was full, they drew it ashore, sat down, and put the good into the baskets, threw out the bad, so it will be at the end of the age. The angels will come out and separate the evil from the righteous and throw them into the furnace of fire, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Have you understood all this? They answered, Yes. And he said to them, Therefore, every scribe who has become a disciple in the kingdom of heaven is like the master of a household, who brings out of his treasure what is new and what is old. When Jesus had finished these parables, he left that place. He came to his hometown and began to teach the people in their synagogues, so that they were astounded and said, Where did this man get this wisdom and these deeds of power? Is this not the carpenter's son? Is not this his mother called Mary? And are not his brothers James and Joseph, Simon and Judas? And are not his sisters with us? Where then did this man get all of this? And they took offense at him. But Jesus said to them, Prophets are not without honor, except in their hometown and in their own house. And he did not do any more deeds of power there because of their unbelief. So, first and foremost, I'm going to do my prayer that I normally will do at the end of my stream. But there is going to be some stuff that I need to talk about that I've been thinking really hard about, and that's how I'm going to truly finish up this stream today as I make my little journey back home. I just want to say, first of all, well, you know what? No, I'm going to go ahead and do my prayer real quick. Dear Father, thank you so much for the time that I got to have this morning to read. Thank you for these people who came through. I really dearly appreciate them so very much. Anybody who had any questions, thoughts, and concerns, I love you, Lord, and I cherish you, and I appreciate every single one of these people, and I love you with all my heart. And I pray that these people come to know you. I pray that they get to experience your blessings in their heart, and they just get to see the beauty of this world that you have created, Lord. I pray that we all just get to understand deeper and deeper every day the wonders of what it is that you have created here. So I lift everything up to you, Lord, in your precious name. Thank you so much. Amen. Bless these people. So with that being said, I appreciate you guys so very much. I'm grateful that I got to do this stream today, this Bible study. It's meaningful to me. It has been meaningful to me every single time that I've done these studies. Dove into the scholarship with you guys, dove into biblical studies and information. Like I said, as a whole, it's really important to me to want to start doing religious studies in general on this channel. But, like I said also, I am not a literalist, a fundamentalist, or anything like that. I've been studying this stuff for a very long time, and I have deep appreciation for cultural development, cultural studies, and understanding, so that we can all get where these things come from, the oral traditions, the literary traditions, all that good stuff. But I have also realized that this is just about to get a lot more personal. I have realized that during these streams, I have had good discussions with people. I have made good connections with people as far as the religious studies stuff goes on this channel. But that was not what this channel started off as. That was not the primary thing. And so as people, we all go all over the place, right? We all have, as we say in Christianese, we have different seasons, different developments of life, and things that are meaningful to us, and things we try out, things that we do. So religious studies is going to continue to be a very serious passion for me. And I am going to continue to do that when I can have the opportunity to do that on this channel. But as a whole, diving into the initial stuff that I did today is going to be a pause that I'm going to do for a while of doing this series and stuff on this channel in particular. I'm going to give great consideration to starting a separate channel where I really do focus on that. I'm giving that consideration not because I haven't enjoyed, like I've been saying, doing what I want to here, but I just feel like overall, if it's going to be seriously meaningful, then it needs to be something I can dedicate time and attention to. And that's just kind of how I've been feeling lately. That's just been where I'm at. I have reinvigorated a lot, like my passion for connecting with people through fragrances and like what I started this channel with as a whole, doing reviews, doing those kind of streams. And I understand very much the necessity, if you're going to do something like this at all, it's no point trying to think of yourself, not trying to sound douchey, but in some sort of heroic fashion of like, look at me, I'm trying to do whatever I want here instead of chasing after growth and development. That isn't what I really necessarily am trying to do. But I do want to be able to reach people and build communities in a way like that feels meaningful to me and as well the people I interact with. So, with that being said, I have thought about it a lot, and I do intend of time to gather, think about how I want to go about doing things, to back off quite a bit, like I said, of doing the religious studies stuff as much. I'll be doing this for a little while, and throughout the week as well. I just won't have the opportunity to do this. So I really do appreciate the past week and months this week. All that has been very special to me. But in the evening times, or weekly, I'm going to continue to do my reviews that I've done. And in the evening times, I'm going to do those kinds of streams. It's going to be fragrance centered for everybody who's been a part of that so far. That's just what it's going to get back to. So I am trying to, like I said, reconfigure how I really want to present things. I want to reconfigure how I want to discuss things with you guys and make it very open and make it feel more sincere, even deeper than I have so far. I know this might not make a lot of sense, and nobody's probably going to really end up watching this and care all that much, but I truly have appreciated connecting to you guys the way that I have. But my heart and my mind is in a particular place right now in life in general and with the things that I try to do. And so we go all over the place, and that's just the way it is as a human. You develop, you grow, and then sometimes things you thought you were doing or expected shift. And it's okay when that happens. For me personally, I believe that God just shows you different pathways and things that are for you to do as they happen and as they come. So it has hit that point where I think it does actually. I tried to do a split thing where on this singular channel, I tried for a while now, for the past like 2 months or so, to make it whatever I want and to do two things in one. I don't like it anymore. I don't feel good about it anymore in the way that I did. So it has been great to do it here, but I am thinking that I'm going to split apart and at some point do a separate channel to do all the religious studies stuff in the future. If I do that, I might either restart from the beginning when that time comes, or just keep moving forward as it was and just let it be what it is. Maybe it won't really matter, but I might do a restart or do actual videos of that. So if anybody's willing to like join in or support that as it happens, I appreciate you. But here on this channel, I'm going to kind of take it back to the way it was before and just do straight up, keep it more towards life stuff and fragrance stuff, because I've noticed it can be very conflicting for people to really kind of get it all in one. So that's what I'm thinking I'm going to do. I understand if people are like, wait a minute, no, I liked what you were doing here. I get that. But this isn't like an ego thing or nothing. This is sincerely like the things that I love to do. I'm trying to think about the best way, if I'm actually going to do YouTube videos, what's the best way to get that stuff, to give it a chance. The best way to give it an actual chance to reach people in a way that's not going to be confusing. Because, believe it or not, I have had a handful of people get confused, a lot of people actually, who like the religious studies, but then don't really comprehend the transfer over to fragrance stuff. And then as well, people who like the fragrance stuff and don't really get vice versa. There's people who like both, but it has been a little conflicting for certain folks. So, this is the last video for a while, and maybe in general, that I'm going to do this on this channel. And then, like I said, in the future, very probably going to start a separate one altogether where it's going to be more focused on the religious studies stuff, and then we'll just see how that goes. And if anybody wants to come over there and join it and support it or whatever, I will appreciate that. But at this moment, to be real, I don't quite have the time to do that and to manage it the way I'd like to. I can make the time, but I'm just not in that place where I'm able to schedule it the way I would like to do so. So I love you guys. I appreciate y'all sincerely. Every person who's taken the time to come through and watch any of my videos, it has meant the world to me. Right now, like I said, I'm just thinking and rambling a little bit and sharing my thoughts. But it has been a beautiful time connecting with you guys through the religious study stuff. I'm just not going to keep doing it here on this channel, especially at least in the near future. I'm going to give it some time. And then seriously, like I said, start something separate where I can focus a lot more on it. Because, like I said, some things can come across very confusing for people. Even if you personally watching don't feel that way, it really can for others. And I don't want to keep making that kind of atmosphere where people don't really get what's happening. And understand how to grasp it and work together through it. So yes, going to start doing this on a separate channel, and just this channel is going to go back to the core of what it is, like my biggest passion overall, and stick with the fragrant stuff. No, this is not some type of I don't care about teaching about God anymore type of junk. I know that in the past when I tried to do this, that I started to come after a little bit, like, oh, you don't want to do that on here anymore, you want to do something separate. It's not necessarily caring about necessarily what other people are saying, but you do got to think about that stuff and how it comes across. So again, this might just seem like silly babbling and stuff, but that is just how it's going to be going forward. So thank you to everybody who's watched these videos on this channel. Thank you to everybody who's given support so far. I see there's only 2 people watching right now, so if there's any questions, anything you would like to ask, please feel free to do so. I'm going to give it a couple more minutes, but yes, I'm going to be about maybe 2 to 5 more minutes. So if you got any questions or anything you would like to know, I'm glad I was able to get through the entirety of Genesis before doing this. I was glad also I was able to get through the entirety of Exodus and the introductory notes for all that stuff, and to open up a lot more and make it a lot more clear what it is that I stand for, what it is that I personally believe. And I want you to also know that just like everybody else constantly moving goalposts and renegotiating with things like their beliefs, their texts and stuff like that, I'm doing that all the time. I believe that if you're not trying to ask questions, if you're not trying to understand deeper what you feel, what you believe, what you value, you're not really existing. You're just coasting day to day. You need to assess and get to know different types of people and really realize what it is you really believe about your own beliefs, your own faith and stuff like that. And that's something that I've been doing, like driving my wife and everybody around me crazy for a long time, is like trying to learn, to discuss, to grapple with things and see how it goes from there. So, like I said, I've had a great time, a fantastic time actually, doing hours upon hours of these religious studies streams here on this channel. But it has just really started to make sense to me that it doesn't make sense to keep doing it the way that I have. This channel started off as a fragrance review channel. Like my oldest videos is that. What people came here for was that. Because of some decisions or slip-ups, it kind of gear shifted away from that for a while. And then also I've had a good time dabbling and doing different things, and it's really been meaningful. But like I said, I'm going to start a separate channel altogether. I don't know what I'm going to call it. I don't know the whole dealio behind it just yet, but it's what just feels the most right, so that I can take this here back to the core of like what I want it to be and the type of people in the community that I've got to make friends with and develop with, and like really speaks to my heart. So I'm sorry. I guess I'm not really sorry, but it is what it is. If it seems bothersome to anyone, if you feel like it doesn't make a lot of sense, I'm totally willing to hear that, to discuss that type of stuff, to just make clarifications or whatever. I also want to continue to be more open to people asking me what it is that I really believe about certain topics and subjects and stuff like that, because sometimes I feel like it can be on this internet sphere. People like to side with people who stand for the exact same things that they do. It could be any particular subject, just to be funny. Not actually ha-ha funny, but to make a little quick side note. Something like, do you believe that shellfish is bad? Or do you believe that a woman being on her period makes her unclean or something? Something silly like that. Like that's just a fake example. But imagine a little thing like that is something that somebody goes, oh, so you believe this and I don't believe that, so we're not the same. We're not on the same category. We can't be friends or whatever. That is the way it kind of goes. It's always a lot about tribalism when it comes to religions and people practicing, people choosing what they do and don't stick to and stand for. And that is why I constantly am saying we are negotiating with anything that we believe and with anything that we read. And for a lot of folks, meeting the right people, having the right conversations, experiencing things a certain way can shift things you have stood for a very long time, and most of our lives go kind of down that road. So, with that being said, my buddy here down below asked to make a video about the meaning of my life, or I think our life in general, and it's not really something to a grand degree anybody can do, because we don't really have the ability to do that. But I can say just a small, tiny little tidbit summary is basically we're meant to have communities, we're meant to love one another, to understand what it means to love people. We are meant to be good and compassionate to one another, and instead of letting selfishness and greed and stuff override us as a whole. That is the way that it pretty much goes. So, with that being said, I appreciate everybody who's come through. I'm going to be signing off here now. Thank you. I hope you guys have a beautiful rest of your day. I send oceans of love to everybody, but like I said, I'm not going to be doing religious studies on this channel going forwards indefinitely. So maybe it'll come back here. Maybe it is going to start a full new channel. Either way, I'm glad I got to do what I did while I did it. I appreciate you guys' interactions, but I just don't want it to be a confusing place anymore. So that's how I wanted to do this, is like one more good stream of getting some things going, even though it kind of seems maybe ultimately silly in the long of it all. And then moving on to greener pastures, if that makes any sense. So is there anything that whoever's watching? Well, I guess not. So I will talk to you guys later.